Let's look at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Week 10 is starting. Christmas is here. Michael Bolton, what are you doing for Christmas?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and pop, I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok, at redrock_bball, and on Instagram, at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms. Bang the subscribe, bang the thumbs up, bang the bell, double bang it, audio, video, you know what to do. That's how we love it around here. That is your Christmas gift to me, as well as the $1 million you're going to pay me when Patrick Williams goes 4-1-1. But that's okay. We'll wait for that later. Guys, we are here. It's Christmas Day, Christmas morning here in Australia as we get ready for the Christmas Day games tomorrow in the NBA. But let's have a quick squiz over at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Go through the things that I think we need to know. Of course, this show cannot always be comprehensive. I can't cover 150, 200 different players where their value is moving up and down. And I know that's hard sometimes because I won't mention a guy or I don't mention this guy enough or whatever. I do my best to try and cover all that stuff. And we're going to do it again here. We're going to have about 40, 45 names, I think. About that many names, maybe 40. 40 names we're going to talk about and their waiver wire adjacent type value. What are we going to start with? Well, let's start where we always start on these. Let's start by looking at some must-roster players. Remember, we've changed sort of the definition of this as we moved into the season. These are guys available in over 30% of leagues who I think need to be grabbed and held right now for at least the next few weeks. That might change as we moving forward, but they just can't be sitting on the waiver wire at this point. And we're going to start in New York again, because his name is still on this list, because he's only at 58%, and it's Isaiah Hartenstein. There is conflicting reports about whether Mitchie Robinson is going to return this season or not, but, whatever. Hartenstein just needs to be rostered. It's simple as that. 58% rostered is too low. He needs to be at 80, at least, because I do think there's probably 15% of leagues that are inactive. No excuses. Got to add him. None. I got Derek Lively on this list. I don't know when Derek Lively is coming back. This is a category league list. I don't know when Derek Lively is coming back, but it doesn't matter. You just add him. This is not something that's going to last weeks and weeks and weeks, I don't think. So we just got to add him. You have to do it. You can't leave him floating around in that many leagues. The aforementioned Patrick Williams, 4-1-1 legend. He's available in 50% plus of leagues. It's going up and up and up. And while it's very easy to shit on Patrick Williams and his development, I've done it many times. It's happening at the moment. The minutes are fine. The scoring's good. The peripherals are good. He's a clear, at the moment, top 100 player. I don't know how your leagues, even 10-teamers, how you look at that and go, I'll forget about it. Like if I added a Colin Sexton, if I've got Jordan Clarkson, if I've got D'Angelo Russell in a shell league, if I've got Herb Jones, I'm very easily dropping him for Patrick Williams. Without question. The shallower you get, the more ruthless you can actually be cutting the back end of your roster, because there are so many guys that are going to cycle through providing those numbers. Got his teammate Alex Caruso there. He's still just 37% rostered. I get the hesitance with Caruso. Someone commented on one of my videos last week, said, man, this guy really hates Alex Caruso. That's one way to interpret it, I guess. Or I think he's the best perimeter defender in the NBA. I really love him. Just wish he could stay healthy. I don't have any hatred for Alex Caruso at all. I think he's one of the... Maybe he's getting a bit more properly rated now. He's one of the most underrated players in the NBA for years. Anyway, he needs to be rostered. 37% is way too low. He'll get hurt again, I am sure. That number doesn't make sense. Nor does Brandin Podziemski. Now, I guess people are sitting there, no games on Christmas Eve, but did they watch yesterday's action? We know Podziemski's been a target on this show as soon as he was announced in that starting lineup. We've had some pretty good success, I think, recently on this show in terms of our mantra. Maybe I'll put that on a t-shirt. Get ahead of it. Maybe a merch store. Get ahead of it. What else would I put? Hey, in the comments on YouTube, if I was doing merch, I don't think I am, what would I put on t-shirts? You're not going to have just a boring Locked On logo. We might do that. Sorry to the Locked On logo creators. I'm not going to just do that. Maybe I could. I have to talk to those guys. But what else would I put on? Get ahead of it. That's what we want. That's what we've done with Podziemski and a lot of these other guys. And it's worked out so far for Brandon. He needs to be rostered. No excuses. And the other one I put on there at the end is Jalen Suggsy Suggs, who is currently dealing with a wrist issue. Doesn't bother me too much, that wrist problem. I do think that you can't really leave him on the wire. He will be interesting when Markel Fultz returns. I don't really think there's a huge impact there. Suggs, like Caruso, can't really play gigantic minutes every night, but he's been great all season, and he just doesn't need to be on as many waiver wires as he currently is. Let's look at the must-roster list now for the old points leagues. Remember, when I do this, I am talking default Yahoo points. There's really no other way for me to do this. Maybe next season, maybe even this season, I switch it to default ESPN points because I do actually believe that ESPN points default is better than Yahoo. The reason that I do Yahoo is it correlates to FanDuel DFS and NBA fantasy default scoring. When you see the NBA fantasy account on Twitter or Instagram put out, these are our top scorers for the day and these are the fantasy points, or if on the rare occasion they reference fantasy points on a broadcast, that is the scoring system they use. The NBA and Yahoo and FanDuel all did this as a default to go, let's get some uniformity. And ESPN did it for 1 year, then they went, nah, we're going to change it up again. Again, I like ESPN's system, but part of the idea was to put a default system out there, which again is part of the issue with talking about points leagues, is that every dickhead in the world tweaks their format somehow so that nothing is uniform anywhere. And it is really hard to grow the sport and promote it more when any number or reference that you have applies to very few people. That's why I do Yahoo default points here. And that's why when people go, Josh, you actually don't know a single thing about points leagues because they actually all take points away for efficiency. Well, the reason that I say that they don't take points away for efficiency is that the default format on the biggest platform doesn't. And the default format through the NBA's actual league fantasy stuff doesn't. And that's why we do it. Anyway, that's just, again, sometimes people don't understand why I say things or why I do things. And it is useful, I think, at times for a timely reminder. So let's, why does that screen look so weird over there? I don't know what's happening with that. I've got to fix it. I just noticed that it's only half on the screen. There you go. That's better. The points league guys, a couple of the same names there. Hartenstein and Lively, Patrick Williams, and Podziemski. They all need to be rostered. Two other names that do pop up as points league guys. Karis LeVert, who is dealing with a knee issue. That's not great. I still think Karis does need to be a category league player as well. But for points leagues, it's really clear. And the other one there is Jaden Ivey, who, again, one of those guys that last week we said, get out in front of it. Let's add him. Let's see where we're going with this. And I don't know what Monty Williams is going to do when players like Jalen Duren return, when Killian Hayes is back. Is he going to screw it around? Probably, maybe. Who knows? But we don't care. We take the chance. And Ivy is, I believe, a guy that we add in category leagues as well. But for points leagues, his value is higher, and he clearly needs to be rostered. 41% is too low. Clearly has to be. It might not work. But you got to get out in front. Finding guys who might be top 100 players on the wire is not easy to do. You got to take swings at it, and that is where we are with that. Okay, so now we've done the must roster section. What are we going to do next? Well, that would bring us into the droppable players.
Get that garbage
Again,
out.
what does droppable mean? You do not have to go out and move on from these players, but you got to consider it. These are guys that I have outside the top 150 for the rest of the season that I think you'd be okay moving on from. Now, there are other names we can throw in here very easily. Like, for example, at the moment, I don't have Zach Collins or I don't have D'Angelo Russell on these lists because I don't know exactly what the Lakers are going to do in terms of Russell's minutes. It is definitely trending there, and I wouldn't have much of a problem if you wanted to move on from D'Angelo Russell. Zach Collins, with Wemby now hurting his ankle again and maybe being on a minutes restriction, we hold him. But if Wemby's playing 31 a night, then Zach Collins won't be a hold. But for now, just hold. Just hold. You know, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, is he a drop? Yeah, like he can be, but he can also have some value. But these names that I've got here, I just don't really see any significant justification for them being 12-team hold guys. RJ Barrett, 79% rostered. No, come on. What are we doing? He might give you good scoring, but as we've seen, this is not the 35-minute-a-night RJ Barrett from past seasons. This is the one where Tom Thibodeau goes, you've actually got better options, mate. And if Thibodeau wasn't as stubborn with it, you can make an argument that he just shouldn't be starting or even playing that many minutes, I think. I am anti-RJ Barrett in terms of I don't see any star potential for him. And I think that's playing out that way at the moment. There's no reason to me for him to be a 12-team category league player. Westbrook, same thing. You just don't need to do it. You don't need to be rostering Russell Westbrook. He's had some okay moments. He could pop up to be a really interesting stream guy, but there's no way that someone in 77% of leagues needs to have him on their roster in a 12-teamer. And 100% not in a 10. Like, no way do you roster Russell Westbrook in a 10. Not even close. Jalen Green appears on this list again. And he had a couple of interesting games during the week, but last game, benched again. And that's the part of the thing with these guys, is that they can always flash. Giggity. Josh Primo, shout out. Not shout out, because he's a shit bloke. So we're not shouting him out. Erase that part. Jalen Green can have the occasional game. But that's like nothing if you have 2 or 3 shit ones in a row. Right? That doesn't do anything. Oh, see? And sometimes I could be guilty of that as well. So look, we saw the flashes. But it's more like when I see it and it's about trying to identify a trend. Well, here's a good game. But every other game seems to be, trending bench. Good game, trend, bench. That's where I go, maybe not. Maybe we don't need to be holding on to this guy. Now, again, for transparency, I dropped Jalen Green in industry pickup a week or so ago. And I believe someone picked him up straight away. I think they dropped him again. I think I went and tried to re-add him. Because that's just the way he's been playing. Like, up and down. This empty scorer who doesn't do anything else and doesn't even do that efficiently. Like, it's just not very good. And the last one on this, we've been on there since week 2, that's Andy Wiggins. There's, again, 62% of leagues is an insane amount. There is no reason for that to be that high. Get rid of him, get him out of here. For points leagues, there's only 2 guys that I see that are over 60% rostered who I do have clearly outside my top 150. And it is Herbalife Jones at 65% and Andy Wiggins at 62. Jones is moving very quickly into a category league drop as well. Points leagues, there's no justification to hold Herb Jones at all. None. Now, Wiggins, we just talked about. Jones, I do think, much like a D'Angelo Russell or a Zach Collins, you're not quite there. I would absolutely have no problem. Maybe they should be all on the droppable because when we say droppable, it doesn't mean have to. It just means you probably can. So maybe I can expand that list out a little bit in the future. But you do not need to roster Herb Jones in points leagues at all. In fact, I would adamantly suggest get rid of him. In category leagues, it is a little bit more nuanced, but I'm going to tap the sign. When you rely upon low volume, high variance defensive stats, you know what there's going to be? A lot of variance turning into low volume. Low volume of the low volume means bad player. And that's exactly what's happening with Herb, especially when you can't shoot. At the moment, he's like, I was going to say slightly better, but maybe not even, Matisse Thybulle. Now, he will be better than this, Herb, and that's why we maybe hold out some hope, but he lost all his minutes to Trey Murphy last game, and that is absolutely a level of concern that I wasn't really expecting to happen this quickly. Who are the most added players over the last 48 hours? That is a really good question, and number 1 on that list is Jaden Ivey. This is why I mean get out ahead of it, because now everyone's gone and grabbed him. If you had added him 4 or 5 days ago when we talked about it, again, it's sometimes harder to trust that, and I get that. You don't have to, I want nobody watching this show to blindly follow everything I say, because that is a recipe for disaster for your fantasy team. Not because I'm not good at this, I'm okay at it, right? No, it's not the reason. It's because I cannot give nuanced, tailored, bespoke advice for every individual team. I throw it out there and go, you probably want to go and do this, right? This is something happening. I can see this trend happening. It might not work. But what I do try to do it is put it out there so that we can get that in our heads and go, well, this might be worth it. And does it pay off 50% of the time, 60% of the time? At the moment, more, sometimes less. But sometimes if you wait until 3 big ones get stacked up, then you get into a bidding war or your fabs are not enough on it or someone else gets in first and you lose out. And then you're stuck cycling through with Herb Jones or Leaky Beasley or someone. Aaron Nesmith, this is going to be an interesting one because Aaron Nesmith is one of the most added players over the last 48 hours using our advanced metric, up 36%. He didn't play very well last game. He, at the moment, to me, is just a steals-type streamer. He's a 14-team league guy. I know that his ranking will look really high on Yahoo because he doesn't turn it over at all, and that's going to make him look great. Him and Lonzo Ball, probably 2 of the best turnover guys in the NBA at the moment. And that has a value, but a way outsized value versus what it tells you. I have no problem rostering Nesmith. I just don't think it's necessary in 12. So I'm not fully in on that one. That's a big number. And you'll see why it's interesting in a second. Podziemski up 15%. It's got to keep coming up, mate. Got another 30, 40% to go up on that. On Yahoo, the top added player. Now, when I say the top added player on Yahoo, I don't repeat the top three are the ones using our advanced metrics, which is 12-team leagues, paid leagues, higher quality, higher caliber leagues on Basketball Monster. That's what we use those numbers for. And then the Yahoo one is all of the Yahoo data, but I don't repeat it. So the number one added guy on Yahoo was Ivy as well, but I'm not going to put his name there twice. It defeats the purpose. So the top guys on Yahoo not included in my top three, I already did. Trace Jackson Davis didn't play that well in the first half of the game yesterday, but still put up good numbers in the second half. And if you had to hit like 3 of his free throws instead of 1, would have looked a lot better. He is a guy that we grab. Looney was better in the last game. There's no absolutely guarantee of Jackson Davis, but honestly, him and Podziemski look to be... Now, this could be exaggeration, and it probably is. Let's talk about it without Draymond Green involved. Steph, best player. Who's the next best? At the moment, Klay Thompson's shooting well, so he's there, but Chris Paul, Wiggins, Jackson Davis, Kuminga, Podziemski. Like, who's the third best player? Is it Podziemski? Where's Jackson Davis fit? Like, that's where you look at it and go, well, yeah, they have to get some minutes, I would think. Dante Exum, old mate Jason Kidd said that Dante will start when players are back and healthy. So that is obviously really interesting, and he should be rostered over Derek Jones. And the other one there, most added, is Isaiah Hartenstein. Finally, we're getting some more people adding him. It just does need to be more. All right, what do we need to look at next? We need to look at now the most dropped players over the last 48 or so hours. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And number one on that list is the Dart himself, Goga Badadze, down 20%, but a little bit of a wrinkle with the Magic yesterday, where Goga closed the game over Wendell Carter. Now, he only played 11 minutes, and I think with the 3 centers there's no way that Goga's going to play 26 a night and be a 12-team league player. So while it was a positive trend for Goga after he played 0 minutes the night before, it is correct to drop him, I think. So that's totally okay. Eric Gordon down 17%. I know his last 2 games haven't been great, and he's complaining, wanting more shots, which I get it. Like, he maybe should get some more shots on a team that's not actually going anywhere, and Bradley Beal's not there, and Gordon's actually a solid player. He's not great, but he's solid. And they've got a good schedule, and he's got a good role. I don't think he should have been dropped. That one screams to me, he didn't score points, so we need to move on. And Kelly Oubre is one of the most dropped players, and I get it. I actually think that that's reasonable. Oubre got a start with Melton out. Since he returned from injury, he is the Kelly Oubre that I expected him to be. One of the big lessons I am learning again this season, and I am always learning. I am 4,000 shows deep into doing this, and I was doing fantasy analysis before I even started doing this podcast. One of the things I am learning in doing that is that more and more, and I need to make sure I remind myself, maybe I'll write it on the stone template, is that the start of the season is weird. It is wacky. And a lot of the things that you believe in the preseason don't happen to begin the start of the year. And then often, as the season rolls on, those type of things start to go back to what you thought. I thought, I don't know about this D'Angelo Russell thing. I think he's going to be actually pretty bad and lose minutes to a lot of players. And he was rolling and playing the third most minutes. And I said, okay, I was wrong. I wasn't sure about Dennis Schroeder, right? And then he was great, and now he's not. And of course, there are things at the start of the season where I wasn't that high on Scotty Barnes, and then he was great, and he continues to be great. So I was wrong. But a lot of these things start to settle. And one of them was Oubre. I was like, there's no way I think he can be a 12-team league player. He needs unbelievably high usage and efficiency, and I just don't think he can do it. And then he had those first few games where he was cracking, and then he, of course, got cracked by a car. And that might be part of his struggles, but it also ties into how I believed he would play to begin with. So I'm not all that surprised. This is what I talked about, though, with Aaron Nesmith. Like, he is one of the most dropped players on Yahoo. In fact, I think he is the most dropped player on Yahoo. On Basketball Monster, he was one of the most added. On Yahoo, he's one of the most dropped. Interesting. I guess the Basketball Monster managers were, or those advanced managers were thinking, I like these defensive stats. And on Yahoo, they were like, man scores no point and has to drop him because he scored 3 points last game. And honestly, I actually think both camps are probably right. I don't mind an ad, but I also don't think you need to hold him. It's an interesting one. Jaden Hardy had 2 big opportunities the last 2 games with no Kyrie, and then obviously one without Luka as well. And he just didn't do anything. I was pretty interested in what Hardy was going to bring this season. I didn't think that Jones or Exum were going to get, or even Hardaway would be on this team, honestly. And I thought Hardy would have a chance to step up. He's been quite disappointing, and he was quite disappointing in those games. So yeah, he's fine to move on from. And the other one is Jim Wiseman, who put together like 2 games in the middle of the week when Bagley and Stewart were out, and we thought, okay, interesting. And now back out of the rotation, he sucks. And that is a very, very, very clear jack. So let's look at some hot players, the guys who are in the top 100 over the last week, and whether we need to do anything with that. Number one on that list is Dean Wade. He's actually been top 100 over the last week. He's available everywhere. I put him here mainly not for 12-teamers to look at least to stream, but deeper leagues, 14s, 16s. You don't find many top 100 guys who have got an opportunity for 6 to 8 weeks available. I don't think Wade's going to keep this up, but he did it. So have a look. Duncan Robinson moved to the bench with Hero back. Hasn't mattered. He's been great. He's taken the value of Caleb Martin. He's taken the value of Kyle Lowry. He's taken the value probably of Josh Richardson. He hasn't really taken the value of Huckett, although we can't really tell with the Heat because Butler's still out, so we don't know how that goes. But Robinson's still playing really well. And honestly, I know that everyone froths Jaime Huckett at the moment. If I was Miami, I'd be making sure that Duncan Robinson played 30 minutes a night and Huckett's played 24-25. But we will see what they do. I don't think that you need to have Duncan on a 12-team roster, but I don't think it's incorrect. This one I would think is incorrect. Isaiah Stewart is top 100 over the last week. He had a really good game last time out on like 89% shooting. Duran is going to be back next week. Stewart almost definitely will move to power forward and I'll lose my shit, but he will lose value. Hopefully he moves to a reserve role, and I just don't see it. I wouldn't bother with him in 10 or 12. Honestly, I don't even think I'd bother with Isaiah Stewart in a 14-team league. I get it. You can stream him in short term. I just don't think there's any value in that lasting. Dante DiVincenzo has been top 100. I don't really know how he's doing it. Like 23 minutes a night, and he's still doing this. That and the inconsistency of the role, the minutes, the production, the usage, the shooting makes me not want to have him as a guy. But he's always streamable, like Christmas Day, streamable, sure, for sure. Kelly Olynyk, again, another inconsistent performer who's putting up really good numbers. I wish this team would just get rid of John Collins and put Olynyk and Kessler together. That combo actually works really well together. Olynyk's passing super important, especially with Conte George and Taylor Horton-Tucker out. And he's putting up strong numbers. He's not a must-roster guy, but he's interesting. And I'm going to throw Jaden McDaniels here because, as you know, I'm skeptical of Jaden McDaniels as a fantasy contributor because I've got good reason to. He's never done it ever before, ever. And the last 2 games, he's been great. And that's pushed him into the top 100. So a guy playing 40 minutes a night who showed an increased scoring ability, you got to get him. You got to get him now. Again, could I have been wrong on saying that I don't think he's a fantasy option? Cool, absolutely. The last 2 games would suggest I was. The previous 4 seasons would suggest I wasn't. So that's debatable. But you add now, and then we figure this out. So this is a nice little run. And out of all these players, Wade, Robinson, Stewart, DiVincenzo, Olynyk, McDaniels, I grabbed McDaniels. And I see where it goes, and then he has 10-3 and 1 next game, and I go, okay, it didn't work. But it's looking all right. Especially of late, it's looking all right. Let's look at some injury replacement players. These might be longer-term ones, which some of the ones we already talked about are. These might be shorter-term ones, but they are worth talking about. And what we do know already today is Yusuf Nurkic is out for Christmas Day, so we're flying in with Drew Eubanks. You can throw Chimezie Metu on that list as well, but Eubanks, even though he struggled last time out, he's still the option that we go to. We go to Nick Richards. I don't know when doubtful legend Mark Williams is going to be back. There is some hope, and I tried to read between the lines of Rod Boone, who I do love what Rod Boone does covering the Hornets. It's a tough beat. There's not many guys that do it. So Rod Boone gets in there. He does ask some questions, and it's a notorious weird organization to try to ask those questions. And a lot of his articles are relatively vague, but you can read through the lines of this stuff. Read between the lines, actually, that's the phrase, to try and figure out what's going on. And his thing was like talking about injuries, and it's like, yeah, Mark Williams, it does appear that he's on track to getting back pretty soon. And he says it's really positive that they've got 4 days off here before they play again. So that makes me think that we might get Mark back at the end of the week. I did not. He might be back next week. But I don't know because the injury reporting is shitful. So we have Richards, who is 81% available. He's got to be rostered until Mark returns. Chris Dunn sits at 5%. If Horton-Tucker's out, we saw it. Dunn dropped 13 assists last game. I am shocked that sits at 5%. Now, George and Horton-Tucker literally might play next game and Dunn is useless and plays 0 minutes. But he's got to be the consideration. Now, am I going to get this right today? A pastel de nata. Pastel de nata. Nemeas Keita. Because I was calling a pastis, but apparently that's 2 of them. Or multiple. So, pastel de nata. Nemeas Keita. Portuguese legend. I don't know if Porzingis is going to play on Christmas. I don't know if Luke Cornett is going to play. In fact, I think Luke Cornett probably isn't going to play. Keita's had 2 double-doubles in the last 3 games. And he's one of a big array of two-way players who are really stepping up this season. And he looks good. And that could be an interesting, at least short-term stream. Craig Porter, I love the bloke. He's really good. And it did take a lot of guys being out, Levert, Garland, and Mitchell all being out, and Merrill. But he showed that he needs a regular rotation role in Cleveland. Now, JB Bickerstaff sometimes can be blind to that thing. But if those guys remain out, and I don't think Donovan Mitchell is going to remain out, but Garland obviously is, and Levert's knee is a consistent problem, there is a little bit of value there in Craigie Porter. And the last one is Dorian Finney-Smith, who is definitely not sexy. Well, I mean, he's a good-looking bloke, but he's not a sexy fantasy name. He's not someone that we look at and go, well, he's going to change the fortunes of my team. But with Ben Simmons set to return in 2037, Finney-Smith has a role. And, again, I'll continue to be honest with you about Cam Thomas, that him in that starting lineup does not work. That is one of the worst starting groups in the entire NBA. Cam Thomas has some of the worst advanced stats in the NBA. His on-off is the worst on the team. His EPM, I think, is the second worst on this team. It's not all on Cam Thomas, but I don't believe that he makes sense in that starting lineup. Well, Finney-Smith does. Now, will Jacques Vaughn make that move? Probably not. But we're seeing Dorian get 30 minutes a night, and I tie him as an injury replacement in to Ben Simmons, because Simmons returning will impact Finney-Smith. But for now, he's a solid enough guy to grab, especially in 14-teamers, and just see what we can do with it. Just see what we can do with it. Lastly, some other names, 6 other names that I do want to talk about that I think are worth discussing here to finish off. And number one there is the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince. The Lakers lineup change worked in the last one. This is another thing that's important to know, is that we talk process over results a lot. And the Lakers made that starting lineup change, Vanderbilt in for Russell. And then someone commented, well, Josh, because they won that game, so you have to say that lineup change worked. And I go, I guess, they won. That lineup, the starting group, played 10 minutes together. That's really hard to do. That means that they started the game playing like 5 minutes together and then started the third quarter playing 5 minutes together, and that's it. They didn't play together the rest of the game. And they were a +1 in a game they won by 9. So did the starting lineup help them win the game? Was it the change in the rotation patterns that helped them win the game? Or do we probably need to see a little bit more? I think they shot unbelievably well in that game also. So that's something to monitor. It's never as simple as we change the starters and we dominate it. Because I really wanted to dig into it. And I was shocked to see that they played 10 minutes. That's it. 10 minutes. Which is a pretty weird amount for a new starting group to just start the game and start each half and then never be pushed back together at all. In saying all of that, Taurean Prince is the only shooter in that group. I guess you can count LeBron as a shooter because he's shooting really well this season, but honestly, we know what LeBron is. Taurean Prince is the only shooter. He's putting up top 100-ish numbers. I know it's hard, and I know he's like in the Leaky Beasley category of like, do we trust him? But at the moment, he's heavily relied upon, and that's important. I've got John Kuminga here. Definitely more of a points league guy or a category punt free throw player, but he is playing well. He's doing enough. I wish he could do more, but he is doing enough to be on a roster in all formats. Karl Anthony Towns is dealing with knee soreness. He may not miss any more games. I don't know this. But Kyle Anderson is the guy that started. Naz Reid's minutes actually dropped for some reason. And Anderson, in a starting role, in place of Towns, is a 12-team league player for categories, not points. So we got to grab him. Rui Hachimura was on fire last game. He played 30 minutes as well. He was a key part of that win. I do not buy Rui as a 12-team league category guy. If he's playing 30 minutes a night, he is a 12-team points league player. I just don't think that he will. But he's worth discussing after that big game. Tari this season, or maybe next season, played only 20 minutes last game. Then the leg continues to be a sore point. I would still hold him, but I reckon if we come back January 1st, I might be playing a different tune. Like if he's getting 20 minutes a night only, 2 like 8-minute stints in the second quarter and third quarter or whatever, and that's it, then that's not worth it. My thing has always been for him is love the talent, where's the role? And we saw it push up, and then it fell back down. And we go, ugh, hold him. Let's see where it goes. And the other one here is just someone who didn't quite hit my cutoff for got to drop him, but Ben Mathurin. 52% rostered, under 20 minutes each of the last 2 games, struggling, not playing well. Nembhard's back. No reason whatsoever that Mathurin needs to be rostered in 10s or 12s. And honestly, we're getting to the stage where he's a 14-team streamer. He might be better at some point. I had some hope in him and taking him like 11th or 12th round just to get a guy to influence my free throw percentage category. way worse, big regression from last season, and Carlisle seems to be losing trust. And that is a waiver wire show. So you know what to do. You're here. You love what you do. You love your life. You love your family. And you love subscribing to YouTube channels. So that's what you need to do as a double banger. And if you're listening on audio, come across, watch the video. Someone commented, I could not believe it, on one of my Instagram posts. And they commented on a video and they said, I cannot believe this is what Josh Lloyd looks like. I went, wow, you've never seen my face in doing this for all of this time? But apparently there are people who are only listening on audio who haven't seen the video. And there's going to be video people who haven't seen audio. So double bang it. You know what to do. Guys, we are done here. Have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for listening and watching. See ya.